Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I think we're ready to start. We're still missing a couple of members, but we're starting anyway. We're going to start with the early childhood development. Natalie Andrade, did I say that right?
Yes.
And Andrade is our budget analyst. Dr. Wright, do you want to come up to the table with your team? Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon. My name is Natalie Andrade, and I'm here with the Department of Legislative Services to present the Fiscal 26 allowance for the Maryland State Department of Education's Division of Early Childhood. As you can see on page 1 of the analysis, the Fiscal 26 budget decreases by $4 million, or 0.5%, to $827.5 million. At the bottom of page 4 begins a discussion of performance measures. On page 5, Exhibit 1 presents kindergarten readiness trends. Maryland kindergarteners demonstrating readiness increased from 40% in the 21-22 school year to 44% in 23-24 school year. Though English learners and children with disabilities still show lower readiness levels compared to other groups. A report on the evaluation of racial, cultural, or linguistic bias in the KRA was submitted by MSDE to the AIB in February 2024. This report raises concerns about the potential racial, cultural, and linguistic bias in the KRA, particularly in assessment design, language variations, and potential disadvantages for students from diverse backgrounds. MSD has indicated that the department is moving away from the current KRA, so MSD should comment on the planned timeline for implementing the new assessment, how it will address concerns about bias, what steps will be taken to ensure a smooth transition for educators and students, and the impact of the AIB's monitoring on this process. At the bottom of page 6, there is a discussion of the trends in childcare capacity. Exhibit 2 on page 8 highlights declines in childcare capacity. Since COVID-19 pandemic, childcare capacity has dropped and has yet to recover to pre-pandemic levels. MSD should comment on the factors contributing to the continued decline in childcare slots, despite the slower rate of decline following the pandemic. The agency should also outline its strategies or plans to address the persistent loss of capacity and work toward recovery, particularly in regions most affected. Additionally, MSD should discuss any challenges or barriers that have hindered the return to pre-pandemic levels of childcare availability. It could be helpful for the agency to provide insight into the broader impact of the trends on families and communities, as well as any initiatives in place to support childcare providers in expanding or maintaining capacity in the future. On page 8, the Fiscal 26 budget includes a proposed deficiency of $116.6 million in general funds for the Department of Early Childhood, Division of Early Childhood, to cover an expected shortfall in the Childcare Scholarship Program due to higher than expected participation in the program. On page 9, Exhibit 3 shows a breakdown of the Fiscal 26 allowance. As you can see, $495 million is allocated to the childcare scholarship, $199 million to publicly funded pre-kindergarten, and $48 million to the Division of Early Childhood. Exhibit 4.
Can I ask a question? Is there anything on here about the waiting list? How many people are waiting to get childcare?
No.
No.
No, we don't have the information here.
Okay.
Maybe the agency can answer.
You look like you want to answer.
If you would like us to.
I would.
Yeah. We currently do not have a waiting list.
Okay.
So hence the reason for the deficiency
That's right.
request.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
That's okay. By law, we're not allowed to do that. That would have to come through the legislature.
Right.
Okay.
Exhibit 4 on pages 10 and 11 shows the proposed budget change. The $4 million decrease is primarily driven by a $30.9 million reduction in general fund support for the Childcare Scholarship Program, An $11.6 million decrease due to the conclusion of the federal BIRD to 5 grant, a $4.3 million reduction in federal COVID relief funds, and a $2.2 million decrease due to the end of mandated funding for the therapeutic childcare program. These reductions are partially offset by a $37.8 million increase in pre-kindergarten formula funding.
Can I just stop you right there? I guess I knew in the back of my brain that we don't have a wait list. I'm just curious to see I guess there's no way of knowing how many kids there are in the state that we're not servicing that we should be servicing. There's no way to know that, really.
There's probably a number we could get you for that, Chairwoman, on the outside edge. But as you know, parents choose different reasons for not.
True.
What were you saying?
Yeah.
Good. We'll double check.
Yeah, we can double check the number, but our estimate is that we serve about 15% at this time.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just curious because I think it helps our argument of
Yeah.
wanting to keep the child care funding as much as we can in there, so.
Absolutely.
Okay, if you can help with that. If you can't, not to worry.
We'll double check and get back to you on
Okay.
it.
It's okay. On page 13 begins the issue section. The first issue is related to the childcare scholarship program. The program provided financial assistance with childcare tuition to 34,147 eligible children and over 22,907 families per month on average in fiscal '24. Exhibit 5 on page 14 shows that the enrollment in the childcare scholarship program grew significantly from 15,296 children in January 2021 to 42,478 in December 2024, a 178% increase. On page 15, Exhibit 6 shows the childcare scholarship expenditures by fund source. As you can see, total fund spending on childcare scholarship payments increases significantly by $332.7 million from fiscal '22 through the fiscal '26 allowance. Due to the ongoing cost of programmatic changes, enrollment growth, and the expiration of one-time ARPA support, childcare scholarship program expenses began exceeding available federal funds in fiscal '23. MSDE closed fiscal '24 with a deficit and anticipates a continued shortfall in fiscal '25 as rising participation is expected to surpass the program's appropriation. To address this, the fiscal '26 allowance includes a proposed deficiency, as I mentioned earlier. On page 16 begins a discussion of fiscal '26 cost containment measures. On January 31st, 2025, MSDE notified Maryland General Assembly of its plan to implement an enrollment freeze for the childcare scholarship program beginning May 1st, 2025, and continuing through September 2025. Exhibit 7 on page 16 provides childcare scholarship enrollment freeze estimates. As you can see, assuming a 3.5% monthly attrition rate, enrollment will decline to 40,633 by August 1st, 2025. At that point, the department will manage the program within a new cap of approximately 40,000 children due to budget constraints, with an estimated total cost of $497 million. Once enrollment reaches the cap, new enrollees will be admitted only as children leave the program, maintaining a steady enrollment of 40,000 children. Furthermore, the department plans to implement new provider reimbursement rates based on the 60th percentile of the '24 market rate survey starting in September 2025. MSDE indicated that the fiscal '26 allowance incorporates provider reimbursement rates at this level, and these changes will enable the department to implement the childcare scholarship program within budget and serve approximately 40,000 children. MSDE should explain how the new lower market rates impact families, particularly in relation to copayments. Additionally, MSDE should compare the new payment rate with existing ones to assess whether provider payments will increase, given the shift from the 70th percentile of the previous rates to the 60th percentile of the new rates. Finally, on pages 18 and 19, there is a plan to implement a wait list of families. On page 19 begins the second issue that provides an overview of early childhood program funding under the Blueprint for Maryland Future. The fiscal 26 allowance includes $269.6 million in total funds for Blueprint mandates supporting early childhood programs, with the majority, $236 million, budgeted as a special funds from the Blueprint for Maryland Future Fund. All early childhood programs expanded or funded through Chapter 36 meet their mandated funding levels in the fiscal 26 allowance. However, the Maryland Child Care Credential Program does not receive funding in fiscal 26 as required by Chapter 165 of 2024. MSD acknowledges this omission as an oversight and indicates that funding for the program will be included in a supplemental budget. Exhibit 8 on page 21 shows that the fiscal 26 pre-kindergarten formula funding increases by $37.8 million compared to the fiscal 25 working appropriations. Exhibit 9 on page 23 presents funding levels and enrollment for publicly funded full-day pre-kindergarten slots beginning in fiscal 2018. The fiscal 25 working appropriation and fiscal 26 allowance include $135 million and $173 million for the pre-kindergarten formula, respectively. These funds will support 20,744 children in the fiscal 25 and 23,894 in fiscal 26 across public and private pre-kindergarten slots. The Blueprint expansion strategy relies on both types of providers, yet many local school systems struggle to recruit private providers. Through the 23-24 school year, at least 30% of pre-kindergarten slots in each Maryland county were required to be provided through private programs. However, no county met this requirement and all requested waivers. In response to challenges, we implemented the mixed delivery system. Chapter 165 of 2024 modified the phasing requirement for local boards of education. Starting in the 24-25 school year, the minimum is set at 10%, with a 10 percentage point increase each year, reaching 50% by the 28-29 school year. At the bottom of page 23 begins issue number 3, related to the revised pre-kindergarten sliding scale methodology. MSD is required to implement a sliding scale to subsidize pre-kindergarten services for families earning more than 300% of the federally poverty guidelines, but not exceeding the 600%. And these are the Tier 2 students. By the start of the 24-25 school year, the BERFA of 2024 deferred the rollout of the 25-26 school year. In addition, the BERFA accelerated the phase-in of the pre-kindergarten per pupil amount. In fiscal 26, the per pupil rate is $14,473. Maryland will reach the full per pupil rate in fiscal 27 at $19,950 instead of in fiscal 2030. According to MSDE, the pre-K sliding scale is based on a family's income, and for each child will not exceed the 7% of a family's gross annual income. The transition to the new model will be phased in gradually, with only a portion of the sliding scale for families between 301% and 360% of the federal poverty guidelines taking effect in the 25-26 school year. The full sliding scale for a Tier 2 families will be implemented in the 26-27 school year. So MSDE should comment on the readiness of public schools to implement and administer family share payments under the new sliding scale model. Additionally, MSDE should address the preparedness of private pre-K providers to serve families in the expanded eligibility groups and clarify how the program will operate under the revised structure. While expanding access to early education is a priority, these changes pose significant budgetary pressures. The combination of eligibility growth and rising per pupil costs could require substantial new state funding at a time when fiscal constraints are a growing concern. As shown in Exhibit 10, to ensure a more sustainable implementation of full-day pre-kindergarten, DLS recommends modifications to the statutory requirements. 1, to maintain the current 360% federal poverty guidelines eligibility cap through fiscal 2030, instead of expanding to 600% in fiscal 27. And 2, to reduce the scheduled per pupil funding increase in fiscal 27 by setting the amount at 17,211 per student instead of 19,950, before resuming the planned increases in subsequent years. Exhibit 11 shows that these changes result in a reduction in state aid for a full pre-kindergarten and associated education funding programs, with cumulative savings of $113.3 million over fiscal 27 through fiscal 2030. Finally, on page 28, the DLS recommendation is to adopt committee narrative requesting quarterly reports on childcare scholarship enrollment, expenditures, and waiting list. And with that, I conclude my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Nice job. Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Thank you for having us. It's a pleasure to be here.
Nice to have you here.
Thank you. I'm Carrie Wright, State Superintendent of Schools, and with me today is Jenna Smith, who is our Acting Assistant State Superintendent for the Department of Early Childhood, Kristen Chalor, who's the Deputy State Superintendent for Operations and Finance. And I just want to say thank you again, and thank you for all the emphasis that you're putting on our little ones who are so important to us. And I also want to give a big thanks to Natalie Andrade for your analysis, and so we're prepared to respond to that. Well done. As we begin, I'd like to share an update on the important work taking place in the department related to early childhood and child care. I will also address some of the questions from the analysis that MSDE was asked to comment on. MSDE's Division of Early Childhood is responsible for administration of child care as well as early childhood education programs. The important work done by the department ensures that the youngest learners in Maryland are cared for in a safe and nurturing environment, and that they are kindergarten ready. As you know, the Blueprint for Maryland's Future established a comprehensive framework to transform Maryland's education system, with Pillar 1 focusing on early childhood education. This pillar emphasizes expanding access to high-quality pre-kindergarten programs for 3- and 4-year-olds, prioritizing equitable access for low-income families, and leveraging a mixed delivery system that includes both public schools and private providers, such as Head Start programs, community-based child care centers, family child care homes, and private schools. In January 2025, the AIB and the State Board established a joint policy providing implementation direction to maximize the number of students served in Maryland's mixed delivery pre-kindergarten system. Pre-K expansion grants are an important avenue to increasing access to high-quality pre-K programs. We acknowledge the importance of making the pre-K expansion grant application accessible to non-English speaking providers. For the 2026 application cycle, the application is available online using the Qualtrics platform, which offers several options to provide the application in multiple languages, including Spanish. The Department of Early Childhood is also working to make the application easier, streamline the process, and enhance customer service in collaboration with the Maryland Family Network and the pre-K informational sessions tailored to specific audiences. MSDE was asked to comment on the planned timeline for implementing the new assessment, how it will address concerns about bias, what steps will be taken to ensure a smooth transition for educators and students, and the impact of the AIB's monitoring on this process. I would like to share with you that MSDE is strongly committed to ensuring that all school and instructional staff administering the new Kindergarten Readiness Assessment, or KRA, are highly qualified and equipped to conduct the assessment with fidelity and sensitivity to children's diverse backgrounds and needs. To achieve this, the department will implement multiple strategies, including a comprehensive training. All staff involved in the KRA administration will undergo rigorous, standards-aligned training. Training will include guidance for supporting students with disabilities and sessions on administering the assessment in Spanish and interpreting the data and planning for instruction for multilingual learners. In addition, ongoing professional development opportunities will be implemented. Finally, we will implement robust quality assurance measures, including regular monitoring of the assessment practices and feedback mechanisms to identify and address any inconsistencies or areas for improvement. The 24-25 school year has been used for training and planning implementation for the new KRA, which will start in fall of 2025. MSDE was also asked to comment on slow recovery and continued declines in post-pandemic trends in child care capacity from July 2020 to July 2021. Maryland's licensed child care capacity dropped by 10,249 slots, reflecting a 4.7 decrease. Overall, child care capacity has not since recovered pre-pandemic levels, but has remained relatively consistent since the COVID-19 decline. The most recent figures show a larger increase of 1,571 slots from July 23 to July 24. MSDE's investment in advanced payment, presumptive eligibility, and the Child Care Scholarship Family Portal and the Child Care Provider Portal has supported child care providers and assisted the ability to maintain capacity in the future, as evidenced by the increase in the number of children, families, and providers participating in the Child Care Scholarship Program from January 2023 to present. A child care supply and demand study is currently being conducted by Maryland Philanthropy and is expected to be completed in early fall 2025. The governor's FY26 budget proposal allocates historic investments in the Child Care Scholarship Program, with $500 million going directly to scholarships, reflecting an almost 400% increase over FY23 funding. This investment underscores the administration's commitment to affordable, high-quality child care. Since January 2023, program participation has grown by 66%, serving nearly 16,000 additional children. Despite historic investments, fiscal analysis shows a need to pause new enrollment starting in May of 2025. On January 31st, 2025, MSDE notified the General Assembly of its plan to implement an enrollment freeze for the Child Care Scholarship Program beginning May 1 and continuing through September 2025. Once enrollment reaches the cap, new children will be admitted as children leave the program, maintaining a steady enrollment of 40,000. MSDE also proposed reimbursement rates at the 60th percentile of the 2024 market rate survey. The State Board of Ed has established an early childhood education and care work group. This work group will meet quarterly to work to strengthen communication, collaboration, and connection amongst early childhood stakeholders, existing MSDE early childhood committees, and the State Board of Ed. I would like to close my remarks by reiterating MSDE's commitment to ensure Maryland remains a national leader in the child care space. And I will now turn to Mr. Tallur to provide responses to the remaining questions from the analysis.
Thank you. Can I just say how nice it's been having you here this year and your responses and your testimony?
Thank you.
It's
Thank
been
you, Chairwoman.
refreshing. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I also want to take a moment to say thank you to your hard work and commitment to the care and learning of Maryland's youngest learners, and to thank Ms. Natalie Andrade for her thorough analysis, coordination, and hard work. MSDE was asked to comment on cost containment measures under the CCS program and impact on co-payments and families and vendors. Beginning September 1st, 2025, childcare scholarships will be reimbursed at the rate of 60th percentile 2024 market rate analysis, a market rate survey, narrow cost analysis. This reimbursement rate is in alignment with the Maryland statute and governor's budget. Providers across the region can expect to see an increase in or a reimbursement rate that remains stable. The change in reimbursement rates will not impact families' co-payments. Families will continue to be responsible for the cost of care that is not covered by the child care scholarships and co-payment. MSDE is able to provide information on the child care scholarship expenditures, enrollments, and status of waitlist as has been requested in the analysis. DLS also recommended modification to the statutory requirements to maintain the current 360% FPG eligibility cap through fiscal 2030 instead of expanding to 600% in fiscal 2027, to reduce the schedule per pupil increase in fiscal 27 by setting an amount at $17,211 per student instead of $19,950 before resuming the planned increase in the subsequent years. MSDE respectfully disagrees and supports the governor's allowance. MSDE was asked to comment on the readiness of public schools to implement and administer family share payments under the new sliding scale model. Additionally, MSDE was also asked to address the preparedness of the private pre-K providers to serve families in the expanded eligibility groups and clarify how the program will operate under the revised structure. According to the law, beginning 2025-2026, the sliding scale will be implemented for families in tiers 2 and 3, higher income families compared to the tier 1 families. Families can be required to contribute a family share amount to cover all or part of the per pupil cost of pre-kindergarten services. Both public and private providers serving tier 2 and tier 3 4-year-olds may choose to collect the family share, but are not required to do so. Public schools do not typically collect fees from families and would need to establish a mechanism to do so if they choose to collect parent fees. Private providers are tuition-based and regularly collect tuition and fees from families and therefore would be able to begin collecting family share payments immediately. MSDE is implementing a simpler 5-level structure, including a co-pay calculator that is available to provider and families. MSDE has increased its efforts to include additional private providers in pre-kindergarten program by providing targeted outreach, technical assistance to support successful entry into the program. Additionally, once private providers are participating in the public pre-K program, they receive ongoing technical assistance from MSDE's programmatic and fiscal staff to implement all aspects of program efficiently. Each program is assigned to a dedicated specialist and fiscal team members to answer questions and provide support. Regarding the recommended budget actions, MSDE concurs with the DLS recommendations on providing reports on quarterly reports and required data points. With that, we stop and wait for your questions.
Have any questions from the committee? I don't think we do. We covered it pretty well.
Great.
I mean, I think we're looking at the financial situation that the state is in right now. I think we're doing really well as far as being able to provide the services we are, and we've just got to stick together and work through the next couple of years, doing as much as we possibly can.
Absolutely.
And hoping that the public will understand.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. We have some witnesses here. Beth Morrow, Ellie Colmers, Chris Push. Do y'all want to come up? Thank you. Okay, Beth, you want to start?
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Thank you to the analyst for a thorough report today and to the leaders at the department. I'm Beth Morrow, Director of Public Policy at the Maryland Family Network, here to ask for your support of the budget and just wanted to lift up a few key points. With regard to the Child Care Scholarship Program, we are serving a record number of children now, which is due to the work of the General Assembly and the governor's historic investments in the Child Care Scholarship Program. We do remain concerned that efforts to put a cap on enrollment will restrict families' access to quality child care, which is a stated commitment of the General Assembly and the governor. And we really urge you all to consider sustaining the investments in the Child Care Scholarship Program so that families don't have to be turned away when they apply to receive a scholarship. Additionally, with public pre-K, the per pupil funding rate is really inadequate at this moment to cover the costs, especially for private childcare providers who are participating in mixed delivery. We urge the committee to consider not scaling back the increases in the per pupil funding amount for the public pre-K dollars. These early years for young children are really an investment, so anything that we can do to make sure that we're committed to families and young children will pay off in the long run. And we urge the General Assembly to ensure adequate funding for child care scholarship and public pre-K is sustained so that families across the state can have access. Right now, we're only serving 14% of eligible children with child care scholarship in response to the chair's question. So please reject enrollment caps, and the proposed decrease in the reimbursement rates is also of concern. We urge the committee to reject that proposal as well. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And I encourage you, as we work our way through this whole budget issue, we need to all work together and find the best answers that we can and serve the most kids. So we'll be looking forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Chris.
Hi, Ellie Colmers on behalf of SEIU Local 500. Here to echo, I think, a lot of what my colleague said and what my other colleague is about to say, but just urging that the committee take into serious consideration a lot of these cuts that are being proposed. And while, I think the Maryland Family Network's comments focus on the needs of families, I think we also need to be focusing on the impact that this is going to have on providers who are mostly women, business owners, small business owners, and that the impact of the cut in the reimbursement rate, while ostensibly it may be an increase in funds, because costs have gone up so much, it doesn't actually net any gain. We're already seeing providers pulling out of participation in the scholarship program due to administrative issues and issues in getting their reimbursements already. So I think we expressed some concern about the ability of accurate quarterly reports in replying to those numbers and who is leaving, attrition, et cetera. We just want to make sure that as many providers and many families can participate in this. And as I said, I think on one of your bills, we have to be investing in programs that we know work. We can't just not spend any money. We need to be being very wise about where those investments are going. So we need to invest in programs that we know work and that are getting people back to work so that they're investing into our economy and participating. Right. So with that, we respectfully request that you take a hard look at some of these cuts and reconsider, hopefully.
Thank you. I don't think there's anybody more acutely aware of the cuts and the issues than this committee is.
Preaching to the choir, yes.
Yeah, we've got to come up with a balanced budget by the end of this session. So I totally hear what you're saying, and just believe that we're going to do the best we can.
And we thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'm Chris Push, Executive Director of the Maryland State Child Care Association, and you have my written testimony, which addresses similar comments to my colleagues here related to all the areas that are interconnected in the DEC budget, and all are important. Child care is an economic and equity imperative. According to the Maryland Comptroller State of the Economy report, child care is declining, and the child care workforce in Maryland is not recovering at the same rates as most other states. Child care prices are high due to cost drivers related to regulations, and consumer prices are high in large part because providers' costs are high as child care operates on tight profit margins, usually less than 1%. The fact that the fiscal 2026 budget did not include funding for the Maryland Child Care Credential Program, a direct workforce investment, is deeply concerning. MSD acknowledges the omission as an oversight again, and we appreciate the law being followed by inclusion in the supplemental budget. My question, though, is how is it possible to omit required law? This is a huge disconnect between MSD and the child care community. How is this budget item omission possible when it has been on every agenda at MSD meetings with stakeholders who have to meet high licensing requirements, receiving low wages? Providers and advocates sent the state board, the superintendent, legislators, comptroller, governor's office over 11,000 emails
from the child care workforce sharing their concerns about the hardship and asking to restore this important program. Additionally, MSD was well aware in April of 2024 when House Bill 1441 was signed into law that the child care credentialing program, including small but important workforce bonuses and training funding, must be restored by July 1st, 2025. So we were told that this would not, in a meeting last week, that this would not be available and open in July of 2025, and this news is a huge blow and disheartening, and we ask that the program is recognized and know that it's recognized in law and required, and that we implore you to require MSD to reopen the credentialing program on July 1st, 2025, as they had ample time to and willing stakeholders to prepare for reopening. I ask on behalf of the essential child care workforce, you uphold the timelines, and they don't have to wait another year for their bonuses and training money.
Thank you. Any comments, questions? Senator Benson? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on now to Towson University. Sarah Baker is the analyst, and Dr. Mark Ginsberg, president, will join us at the table. Thank you.
Okay, I will start on Exhibit 1 on page 4, which shows the trends in first-time applications. And you notice the drop in applications in 2015 was due to Towson's decision to stop using Common App. Due to that, a lot of applications were from students who had no intention of attending Towson. The increase in 22 is due to Towson's decision to go back to using a Common App and continuing test optional admissions. Since then, the number of applications has steadily increased to almost 21,000 by fall 24. Exhibit 2 on page 5 shows that the fall 24 enrollment declined by 1.5%. This is the 6th year of the enrollment decline, which was primarily driven by the decline in the continuing students. The number of transfer students declined 3.5%, and since 2019 have fallen about 32%. After experiencing its largest first-time class of first-time students of over 3,023, the number decreased to 2,974, which Towson attributes to challenges related to the rollout of the FAFSA simplification form. Overall, at 16,270, undergraduate student enrollment is down 17.1% from fall 2019. And we asked the president to comment on the causes for the decline in students, and in particular transfer students, and efforts being taken to stabilize enrollment and retain students. Turning to Exhibit 3 on page 7 in retention rates. So after remaining steady around 87%, the second-year rate declined to 83% with the 22 cohort, and the third-year rate for this cohort fell to 67%. And this may reflect the impact of the pandemic and challenges faced by this cohort from spending their senior year in a virtual environment and having to adjust to life on campus and in-person classes. But neither rate has returned to pre-pandemic levels. Exhibit 4 on page 8 shows the 6-year graduation rates. Overall, the graduation rates for all students has remained stable around 75%, and that for minority students around 73%. After decreasing to 69% with the 2017 cohort, their rates for African American students has improved to 72% with the 2019 cohort. Now, key factors to improve student success is access to financial aid, and to that end, as shown on Exhibit 5 on page 9, total expenditures on institutional aid grew 24%, or $37.3 million in 24. While spending on need-based aid declined during the pandemic in 21 and 22, expenditures have increased by $4 million in 23. Overall, need-based aid accounts for almost 57% of spending. And students receiving aid are more likely to persist and graduate, and this is illustrated on Exhibit 6 on page 10. And as you can see, overall, those receiving institutional aids graduate at a higher rate than those who did not receive aid. Exhibit 7 on page 11 shows undergraduate degree production, which has declined to a little under 4,000 in 2024, reflecting the continuing decline in enrollment and the effects of the pandemic. Since 2020, the number of public professional degrees has fallen by 20%, to which Towson attributes to a combination of factors, including discontinuation of programs, declining interest in healthcare professions post-COVID, and a decline in enrollment in their nursing program. Exhibit 8 on page 13 shows changes in unrestricted expenditures by program areas between 24 and 25. And overall spending increases 7.4% or $39.9 million. You'll note that the 78.4% increase in operation and maintenance of plants is due to a variety of factors, including transfer to fund balance and increased spending on facility renewal, contractual service, and the opening of a new facility. Decreased spending in other program areas are related to change to better manage their vacancy rate by increasing the budgeted turnover for each division. Turning to the proposed budget on page 14 in Exhibit 9, state funds decreased 7.1% or $14.8 million when excluding the impact of the 25 general salary increases and 26 which aren't included in the 25 working appropriation. Towson receives around $600,000 for the opening of a new facility that is partially offset by the removal of $500,000 for 2 legislative ads. We asked the President to comment what actions will be taken to cover the reduction in state funding. Turning to funding per full-time equivalent student on page 15, as shown on Exhibit 10, after remaining fairly stable from 2017 to 19, state funding per FTS has grown 10.9% to $7,039 per FTE in 2020, and continued to increase through the years to over 12,576 per FTEs in 24. And this is due to various factors, including 4 years of general salary increases, restoration of the BPW cut in 24, coupled with declining enrollment. This resulted in state funding exceeding tuition fee per FTS in 23 and 24. The recommendation is on page 17, is to see the USM overview for system-wide recommendations. And that concludes my presentation.
Good job. Welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Nice to have you.
Well, Senator King, thank you for having us, and members of the committee. It's great to be here today. With me is Ben Lowenthal, our Chief Financial Officer, and I'm sure he'll be able to answer any questions you might have also. And let me also thank Sarah Baker for her comprehensive and also informative analysis, and it's great to have had you on campus recently, Sarah, as well. As articulated in our supplemental materials, Towson University's momentum has continued to accelerate, and we're very proud of that. It's accelerated in recognition of the quality of our academic and student services, and especially the demonstrated accomplishments of our students. You may have seen, and we too are very proud, that last fall, the Wall Street Journal named TU the #1 public university in the state of Maryland and the #15 public university nationally. And we believe that truly is a testament to the impact we provide for our community each and every day. We achieved this, by the way, while also remaining a best buck university as articulated by Washington Monthly and being recognized as a great value for our students and our students' families. TU's education is both top-ranked, accessible, but also affordable. And we're an anchor for our community and an anchor for the state, and we pride ourselves on being stewards of place. I'm fond of saying that there are many great universities in Maryland. At TU, we strive to be a great university for Maryland. And we're an engine of opportunity where success is possible and within reach for all of our students. Of our nearly 20,000 students, 90% hail from Maryland, 60% identify as a member of a racial or ethnic minority group. And we're very proud that our student demographics are a direct reflection of our state's population. In addition, nearly 20% of our undergraduate students are first generation. That is the first in their family to attend college, and more than a third of our students receive federal financial aid assistance, primarily through the Pell Grant program. We're also a catalyst for workforce development in the region. Nearly 92% of our recent alum are currently employed in the region, working in some of our community's highest need fields. In fact, TU educates more teachers and more undergraduate healthcare workers in Maryland than any other university, public or private. And we've become a national leader also in cybersecurity and computer science. We also serve as a national leader in entrepreneurship and community engagement, thanks in part to the respected Startup at the Armory, our community incubator and accelerator, which recently was named one of North America's top university-linked economic development programs. TU shares an unwavering commitment to P-12 education. Last year, with the support of the General Assembly, we became home to the Maryland Center for Community Schools, a catalyst for one of the 5 pillars of the blueprint for the future of Maryland. We also have launched recently a teacher induction partnership with Carroll County Community Schools, a partnership that will grow to other school systems in the region. This partnership helps to support new teachers entering the workforce and enhance their retention in our local schools. And we believe this program, led by the respected Dr. Nancy Grasmick Leadership Institute, will in fact become a model for school districts throughout Maryland. And finally, just days ago, Towson University was recognized by the Carnegie Commission and the American Council on Education as a designated research college and university, a big milestone. Our faculty, staff, and students are conducting highly consequential, highly impactful research, work that will solve many of our grand challenges that we face today as a society and will face in the future. Much of TU's research, fortunately, increasingly, is supported by externally sourced funds. Your support has been integral, it's been vital to our demonstrated achievements, and remains fundamental to our continued trajectory of success. Your investment in Towson University is an investment in Maryland's future. We thank you for your support. Now let me address a couple of the issues that Sarah Baker raised. First, with respect to the budget reduction requirements we have, which for TU amount to round numbers about $11 million in next year's fiscal budget. There's a principle that I think is important, that we can't cut our way into prosperity. We must blend cost reduction with increases in revenue. It's only sensible and good practice for any organization. At TU, we're really pleased. As Sarah mentioned, this year we have received the largest number of applications for freshman admission in the history of the university. Last year we received the highest number, and the year before the highest number. It's an increased trajectory over the last 3 years. We anticipate, as a result in part of the increase in applications, but also the high rankings and the continued interest in TU, that we plan to enroll about 200 additional first-year students next year while we continue to retain our students at a higher rate. Our fall to spring retention of our first-year students this year was at 90%, an all-time record. We also intend to have a modest increase in transfer students next year. We plan to pause, not freeze, but to pause hiring so that each and every vacant position can be critically evaluated and assessed for their necessity. We do not anticipate, however, a reduction in force, nor do we anticipate or plan for furloughs. Review of all expenses of our academic and operational programs also will take place so that we can euphemistically tighten our belt, and we will do so. But we do not anticipate, nor we plan to disrupt the services, to disrupt the programs that have contributed to the success of our students. That's a really important principle, the principle that our students come first, and the transformative experience that we provide to them has to be forefront in our endeavors. Now, next, let me talk briefly about enrollment. It is true that there's been a reduction of enrollment since 2019, since COVID. It's been a reduction in enrollment in nearly every university across the country. Today, our enrollment is approaching 20,000. We'll be close to that next year. I mentioned we anticipate increasing enrollment slightly next year. The drop in enrollment since COVID was not unexpected, but the drop in the community college enrollment around the state was even greater than had been expected. Traditionally, nearly 50% of our undergraduate students enroll in TU transferring from a community college. It's down a little bit, but it's down principally because enrollment in community colleges has also decreased, and as you know, has decreased precipitously, and it has not risen at the same rate of the enrollment rise of our first-year students. It's beginning to come up, but it's not coming up at the same rate as our first-year student enrollment. So we anticipate modest increases in first-year enrollment and modest increases as well in transfer enrollment. With that in mind, and developing, we think, very propitious transfer-related programs with each of the community colleges in Maryland. And by the way, I co-chair a statewide task force on community college transfer practices and protocols. And some of the models that we have seen and witnessed around the country are models we're beginning to institute in Maryland, which we think will further create opportunities for success and opportunities for a more seamless transfer of students from Maryland's community colleges to its four-year institutions, including TU. We will continue to work on that, to sharpen those programs, and I believe that our enrollment will continue to increase such that we will hopefully eclipse or come very close to that 20,000 mark next fiscal year. And with that, I conclude my testimony. Glad to have Ben with me. Happy to answer any questions. And Senator King, thank you very much for
Thank
your
you so
support of
much.
TU through the years.
Yes. Just one question
Sure.
that we have tossed around here this session, we have for the last several months. The whole dual enrollment program.
Yeah.
Where I've had some students that have said they've taken classes in the high school program, and then they get to Towson or College Park, and then those classes don't transfer. They've got to take them again. And I've had promises that we're going to work on that to find courses that work both ways. And I'm sure you've probably been involved in that too. Just wanted to tell you that's an interest that we have.
Yeah, it's really, and having chaired now the transfer initiative in the state, there are three things that most transfer students have lost traditionally. They've lost time, they've lost credit, and they've lost money. Mm-hmm. And those are the problems we have to solve. And that's really the work of that transfer task force, is to solve that problem so that there could be more seamless articulation between the community colleges and the 4 years. And I'm happy to say we're making progress on that, and I hope we'll begin to see even more demonstrated progress over the next year or so.
Great. I'm a big believer in this dual enrollment program.
Yeah, we are too.
We've got sharp students that are ready to take those courses. And I'm not looking to dumb down any course by any means, but I think we can have a good program that way. People like you leading it will be in good shape.
Yeah, I think the key is to be sure that our faculties are integrated so that a course that's taught at one institution is equivalent to a course at another institution, whether it's taught in the high school as a dual enrollment course or whether it's taught at the community college. And that's really been the emphasis of the work we've been doing.
Yeah, and for me, if it's going to be a part of a dual enrollment program, it's got to be as rigorous of a program as you'd have at the college level.
100%.
Don't believe in making it easier for high school kids, but I do think that we've got a lot of students that are up to doing courses like that, and so we just have to make it possible for them if we can.
Yeah, it's not a matter of easier. It's a matter of having equivalent in content, actually, too.
Right.
So that if a student takes an introductory course, then they can succeed in the next level course. Mm-hmm. And if it doesn't have the same level of content, it makes it really hard for students to succeed in their advanced work.
When we started asking questions about the dual enrollment program, the answer I got from quite a few people was that there were a lot of people that felt that the college courses were a lot more stringent than the high school classes were. And I just think we've got to find a balance in there so that it all works.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? Senator Benson.
Yes, Senator.
Thank
Good to see you.
Thank you. Very nice to see you all this afternoon.
Yeah.
Thank you for what you do,
Appreciate it.
the Rising Stars. I'm looking here where it says that your enrollment at one point in time, for 6 years, you all had a problem with a decline in enrollment. Have you all, tell me what you've done to improve that?
Well, we tried to do everything we possibly can, including outreach
Is
to...
it still going on?
Well, it's going up. The enrollment is going up. And so we're seeing the fruits of our labors as we work with high schools throughout the state, as we work with guidance counselors throughout the state. But as importantly, as we work with community colleges, because as I was mentioning, about half of our students come from the community colleges, and that's where we've seen the precipitous decline. First-year students continue to increase, and we're still seeing about the same number of first-year students come now as they had even before the pandemic. But those transfer students have reduced significantly. And so, as the senator was saying, having programs that provide successful articulation, that allow for seamless transfer. And also we've come to understand, and this is an important point, that when first-year students come to the university, we provide a very specific orientation program for them that could help them to succeed. Transfer students need something similar, but not identical. They need something really tailored to the transfer experience, so that not only will they come to the university, but they'll be successful at the university. And I'm really pleased that TU, they're graduating at about the same rate, even higher in some cases than our first-year students, but we need to bring more of them to the university, and we're working hard to do that.
They have something very similar to that at Prince George's Community College?
Yeah.
Or they partner with the University of Maryland?
We're working closely with Prince George's Community College as well. In fact, the president of the Prince George's Community College is co-chairing the statewide task force with me.
They have a developer who offers a special program
Yeah.
there for students. As a matter of fact, he's since passed, but the program is continuing on. But
Yeah, it's a model. With the more students transfer to TU from the Baltimore County Community College than any other, but we are the largest transfer destination in the state for community college students. So we receive fortunately receive transfer students from each and every community college in the state. Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good to see everybody today.
Okay, now we'll move to Frostburg State University. Sarah Baker is again the analyst, and Al Delia, did I say that right?
It's close enough, ma'am.
President, interim president. As the proud parent of a Frostburg graduate, this is one that I always look forward to hearing.
Madam Chair, I knew that, and I'm proud to know that.
Okay, I'm going to start with Exhibit 1 on page 4, which shows the trends in first-time applications. And the increase in 2020 is due to applicants who applied through the Common App, but however, most were not likely to attend Frostburg. After a 2-year decline, the number of applicants has grown to over 5,024. Now, Frostburg attributes this to a number of factors, including a partnership with a student search firm, implementation of direct admit program, and creating a more robust communications campaign. Exhibit 2 on page 6 shows the fall enrollment, and after 7 years of decline, grew in fall 23 and 24 to over 3,400 students. In 23, you'll note that the number of transfer students increased by 152, which is attributed to greater physical presence at the community college, launch of an online LPM program, and scholarship programs targeting transfers. The number of first-time students increased in 23 due to a number of factors, including targeted events, reducing decision time to 48 hours, and early scholarships and financial aid. Overall, since 2015, when Frostburg experienced the highest enrollment of over 5,000, it has lost almost a third of its undergraduate student population. Turning to Exhibit 3 on page 7 in retention rates. The second and third year rates started declining with the 2019 cohort, which may reflect the impact of the pandemic. And the second rate increased with the 24 cohort, which may reflect the increase in enrollment. However, neither rate has returned to pre-pandemic levels. Exhibit 4 on page 8 shows the 6-year graduation rates. And the 2015 cohorts achieved the highest rates, and this was one of the last cohorts to graduate before the pandemic. Since then, the rates for all the students have declined, with the achievement gap widening with the 2019 cohort. Moving on to institutional aid on page 9, Exhibit 5 shows total expenditures, which grew 47% to $9.2 million in fiscal 24. Now, expenditures on need-based aid fell 56% from $4.2 million to $1.8 million in 24, while that spent on merit scholarships grew by 126% to $4.8 million. So we asked the president to comment on the decline in spending on need-based aid. Now, as students receiving moral aid are likely to persist and graduate, Exhibit 6 on page 10, as you've seen in other analysis, shows that those receiving institutional aid graduate at a higher rate. Exhibit 7 on page 11 shows undergraduate degree production, which has declined from 1,078 in 2019 to 818 in 24, reflecting the continuing decline in enrollment and effects of the pandemic. Since 2019, the number of health professions degrees has dropped by 31%. So we asked the president to comment on factors leading to decline in the number of health profession degrees awarded. Exhibit 8 on page 13 shows changes in unrestricted expenditures by program area between 24 and 25. Overall, spending has decreased 0.7%, or around $800,000. And decreases are primarily related to realigning the budget, adjusting for spending on facility and debt, and other increases in other areas are related to general salary increases. Turning to the proposed budget on page 14 in Exhibit 9, State funding decreases 5.1% or $3.1 million. Again, this excludes the 25 general salary increases and 26 that are not in the 25 budget. Frostburg does receive around $550,000 for the opening of a new facility, equipment, debt service. And we asked the president to comment on what actions will be taken to cover the reduction of state funding. Turning to F, funding per FTES on page 16. As shown on Exhibit 10, state funding per FTE has grown 102%, or $9,265 per FTEs, which can be attributed to continuing decline in enrollment, which has fallen 34% from 17 to 24. And then starting in 2020, there have been salary enhancements and restoration of the BPW cuts in 23. The first issue of Frostburg's plan to eliminate a structural deficit starts on page 18. As previously mentioned, Frostburg has been struggling with enrollment, and this is illustrated on Exhibit 11. It should be noted since 2010, the FTES enrollment has fallen 36%, while the number of faculty FTEs has decreased only by 14%. The continuing enrollment decline created budgetary challenges, and as Frostburg needed to find a way to cover the loss of tuition and fee and auxiliary revenue, which is shown on Exhibit 12 on page 19. As you see, prior to 2017, state funding and tuition and fee revenues were basically equal, but by 22, state funding increased $3.8 million, while tuition and fee revenues fell by $5.1 million. Since 2022, state funding grew by $15 million, mainly due to general salary increases, which totaled about $9.2 million. And you'll also note that auxiliary revenues decreased by $4.2 million. It should be noted that the state does not provide funding for salary increase for non-state supported position, which for Frostburg are primarily related to auxiliary enterprises, so they needed to find revenue to cover these increases. All these factors result in a $7.7 million structural deficit in fiscal 25. Now, the key to resolving the deficit is to stabilize and increase enrollment, and to that end, Frostburg implemented a strategic enrollment management plan. So last May, they added $50,000 to the admission and marketing budget to increase enrollment for fall 24, which yielded positive results. And for 25, they are doubling their budget so as to increase efforts to diversify enrollment initiatives. In addition, Frostburg developed an Education Market Alignment Planner, EMAP, that will result in an expected surplus of up to $3 million in 25. Also, while Frostburg projects a surplus of $3.3 million in 26, this will be offset by the 5% reduction to their appropriation. Exhibit 13 on page 21 summarizes the EMAP's metrics and goals and savings to date. As you see, the key elements of the plan include university and unit operation reductions, administrative reorganization, athletics, revenues from increased enrollment, and faculty reentrenchment, which is where most of the savings, about $4.9 million, will be realized. It should be noticed that USM does have a policy that specifies that faculty reentrenchment process to ensure protection of faculty members. And as part of the process, Frostburg formed a planning committee charged with devising a plan that was submitted to the president for approval and amendment. So at the start by fall 25 semester, Frostburg plans to reduce 30 faculty positions, which will include full-time, non-tenure track faculty, adjunct faculty, and tenure track faculty with less than 2 years of service. By spring 26, Frostburg, the target is to reduce another 15 faculty positions that could include tenure track and tenure faculty with more than 2 years of service. We asked the president to comment on the progress of implementing EMAP, in particular the status of faculty reentrenchment, and also why the budget assumes transfers of fund balance of $1.5 million and $1 million in 25 and 26 if the plan is to have a structural surplus in those years. The recommendation is on page 23 and is to see the USM overview for system-wide recommendations. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. You've got your hands full. I have to say, at the start of all this, Dr. Nowazik, is that how you pronounce it?
Nowazik, yeah.
Had called me back in the fall and was so thoughtful about what was happening and knowing that he had to trim back a little bit and trying so hard to come up with the plan for how everything was going to work. And I'm sure hats off to him because he, as sick as he was, he fought right until the last minute, I think, trying to do the right thing for Frostburg. So I'm glad you're there to take his place, and we'll try and help you through it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you for allowing us an opportunity to testify on Frostburg's budget. I'm Al D'Elia. I'm interim president at FSU, and to my left is Troy Donaway, who is vice president for administration and finance at the university. We have provided detailed written testimony about our condition at Frostburg, and have included in that detailed written testimony questions that Sarah Baker, our excellent legislative analyst and has done a yeoman's job, as she always does, asked in that document. So those detailed answers to those questions are provided in writing as well. What I'd like to do is just take a couple of minutes to orally go through those 4 questions that Sarah asked, and then open the floor, obviously, to any questions you might have about this or any other issue. With regard to reduction in need-based aid, that was really a one-time issue. We were experiencing high turnover in our Office of Financial Aid, including in the leadership, and actually switched software programs that managed that financial aid for us. We went back to the native program that we had prior, also had some changes in the leadership in that office, and we have gone back to the kind of traditional levels of financial based aid that we provide. The next question was with regard to the health professions. We saw a downturn coming in health professions, particularly in our nursing programs. That was really in response to COVID. As you will recall, during the COVID years, workplace conditions for nurses in particular were not particularly good. And that, I think, was projected to cause a decrease in the number of college-bound students who wanted to pursue healthcare careers. We saw that. President Nowacek actually saw that before it started happening. So we adjusted by increasing other kinds of health professions programs that we have at the university, and indeed did see a downturn in the number of nursing students coming to FSU. We expect that will begin to go back up in the coming years. With regards to the reduction in state funding that we expect this year, we support the governor's budget. We clearly understand that the state of Maryland, and we are part of the state of Maryland, have budget challenges coming up this year, and we are willing to do our part and help the state work through the budget challenges. We do not expect to have to go through some of the difficult decisions and implementations that we have in the last year again. We do not anticipate any layoffs or furloughs for the university. We will, as my colleague Mark Ginsburg talked about, we will work very hard to tighten our belts, but we will do so in a way that will not affect the experience that our students have at Frostburg State. We were able to do that this year, which goes into the EMAP program question that Sarah Baker asked. We were able to do that this year with virtually no impact to our students. We did have retrenchment for those that are not academically involved. Retrenchment is academic speak for layoff of faculty, tenured and tenure-track positions. The numbers that Sarah read were indeed correct. We had anticipated up to 45 tenured and tenure-track positions needing to be eliminated. That was our worst-case scenario. That was the first year, that was the first and second year projections under the Educational Market Alignment Plan. We also very aggressively let it be known on campus that within the Board of Regents policy and within the handbook of the faculty at Frostburg State, there is this process called transitional terminal leave, often referred to as phased retirement, that must be initiated by faculty. This cannot be initiated by the administration. It must be initiated by individual faculty members, and it's an agreement to achieve a separation of employment by that faculty member. Those faculty members who opted to make a proposal wound up being 13 faculty members that we reached an agreement with. In addition to those 13, there were 4 faculty that actually retired, just normal retired. Those 17 faculty represent about 1.5 times the compensation levels, because they were senior faculty, than do more junior faculty that we were looking at retrenching. So when you take a look at the savings, the cost savings, those were a very high number of dollars that we were able to save through voluntary retirements and separations from the university. We also used administrative retirements and applied those savings towards the faculty retrenchment, and also eliminated some full-time non-tenure track positions. There were actually 4 originally eliminated, which are not tenured or tenure track positions, and 11 adjunct positions, each one of whom taught 1 course. When we added all of that together, we achieved our targets. We had 2 targets which effectively were the same. We had a target of achieving $4.875 million in annual savings starting in fiscal 27. We actually fell just short. We achieved $4.873 million in savings as of fiscal 27. And we had a target of improving our student-to-faculty ratio. It had dropped to less than 13 students to every 1 faculty that we had on staff. At our high, we were at 18 students to every 1 faculty. An appropriate number for a university our size is about 16 to 1. So we established a target of 16 to 1 after faculty retrenchment. We hit that target. In fact, we slightly exceeded that target. Depending on how you do the count, we can either say it's 16.1 to 1 or 16.5 to 1, whether we count international students that are not on our campus in that ratio or not. So we achieved our target in terms of faculty-student ratios. We achieved our dollar target, and we achieved that by eliminating 3 tenure-track faculty positions and 1 tenured positions. That's it. We've achieved our financial goals. For fiscal 25, we had established as our projected goal for our finances to go from what was a $7.7 million structural deficit at the beginning of July for fiscal 25. We had hoped to move to a $3 million structural surplus with help from the University System of Maryland at the end of fiscal 25. As of 2 weeks ago, we missed that goal. We actually blew right past that goal. We are now at a $3.5 million structural surplus as of right now. It is that structural surplus that will allow us to navigate the waters that are coming with the anticipated budget cuts that we expect as a result of the state financial challenges. So we have made some very difficult decisions. The implementation of those decisions has equally not been easy. It has tragically affected a handful of faculty members very directly, and we are doing everything we can to assist those faculty by providing career placement services to them at no cost to them, by providing opportunities on campus that are not faculty positions to 1 or 2 of those faculty members so that they can remain employed by FSU. And we hope to be able to also continue to grow. So there is the savings side of any equation, but there's also the revenue side. So as our legislative analyst has explained, we have seen a decline in enrollment of 36% over the last 14 years or so. That 36% equates to 1,700 students. For us at FSU, a student is roughly the equivalent of $10,000 in net revenue for the university. So over those 14 years, those 1,700 students is the equivalent of a decline in revenue of $17 million that we've had to deal with. So we implemented 3 years ago a strategic enrollment management plan, which looked to very deliberately and strategically figure out ways that we can improve our enrollment numbers. In fact, one of the questions that the analyst asked was about the use of fund balance, $1.5 million in the current year and $1 million last year. There's actually an additional $1 million for next year that is slated to be used in fund balance. Fund balance, as you know, is to be used essentially for one-time expenditures. And in this case, they are all that money is being used for one-time expenditures. $1 million a year is being used for a contract with a national recruiting firm to help increase increase our student numbers, largely in our adult learners segment. And $500,000 is being used to purchase vehicles for the university, something we have not done in a long time, but to purchase vehicles for the university that will allow us to actually cut operating costs and transportation for the university. But that strategic enrollment management plan that we have put together has begun to pay dividends. This year, as part of the EMAP, we had projected that we would see an increase in enrollment of 100 students. What we saw was an increase of 81 students in the fall. And just as of about 2 weeks ago, which was our census day on campus, we saw that number more than double to almost 200 students for this current academic year. We had projected, as I said, 100 students. So we are doing what we said we were going to do. We are achieving the results that we had hoped, and we will continue to do so. So, Madam Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions you or members of the committee have.
Thank you. It's such a wonderful place up there. And the last time I was up in Western Maryland, I just took a little detour and went and drove around through the campus, and a lot of fond memories up there with the kids. But it's a wonderful place, and it has to survive. So.
Thank you. It will, and thank you for doing that. And please come back and visit anytime. I would advise doing so in the spring or later.
Yeah, I remember some of those trips up there on 68 in the snow, yes. That's right. Any comments? I think we're good. Thank you very much, and best of luck to you, and we'll keep working with you.
And Madam Chair, if anybody prefers hard copy of the testimony, I have a handful of copies if people want it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, committee, that ends it for today.